I'm going to try not to screw this up tonight, but I'm going to call this meeting to order, and the purpose of the beginning of the meeting is for school board organization for 2026. I'd like to call the roll for attendance. Ms. Basine?
Here.
Ms. Buffalo?
Here.
Dr. Martin?
Present.
Mr. Paulson? Colonel Paulson?
Here.
Ms. Slaughter? Ms. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Calogero?
Here.
All right, made it through the first part, so we're doing all right now. Now, nominations are now in order for the office of board chair. Do I have any nominations?
I nominate Ms. Thomas.
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Moore Buffalo.
Any more nominations? All right. If not, I need a motion to take a vote.
Motion that we take a vote.
And a second.
Second.
So the motion by Mr. Calogero, second by Dr. Martin. So I'm going to now call each board member's name. If you would respond in the, with the name of the candidate that you're voting for chair, I'd appreciate it. Ms. Basine?
Sorry. Hold on. I'd like to, I'm voting for Mrs. Moore Buffalo, and I'd like to state why. Mrs. Moore Buffalo led our school board when she was previously chaired through, sorry, our student outcomes focused movement, so to speak, where we put greater focus on our students. And I think we made tremendous progress with our board goals and non-negotiables under her leadership, and I think that's where we need to kind of get back to, and I'm looking forward to having her continue in that role. So I'm supporting Mrs. Moore Buffalo.
Thank you. Ms. Buffalo?
Buffalo.
Dr. Martin?
Moore Buffalo.
Colonel Paulson?
Ms. Thomas.
Ms. Slaughter? Ms. Thomas?
Thomas.
Mr. Calogero?
Miss Moore Buffalo.
And Mr. Cloud, if you'd verify, I had 4 for Ms. Moore Buffalo and 3 for Ms. Thomas?
Well.
So at this point, I'd like to congratulate Ms. Moore Buffalo as the chair for the school board for 2026. And if we can take a brief pause to reposition Mr. Calogero and Ms. Moore Buffalo.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
To move on to the position of vice chair.
Well, again, thank you, everyone. We're going to move forward with the agenda. May I have a motion for vice chair? Names for vice chair.
Nominate Ms. Slaughter.
Slaughter is nominated for vice chair. Is there any other names?
For Buffalo, I'd like to nominate Sarah DeCalogero.
Let's just stick to the script. So, Ms. Slaughter, I'm sorry.
I think you're supposed to ask if there's any more nominations. I didn't hear
Yeah.
that.
I'm going to my script. I need to stick with the script. So, is there any other names for the nominees? The motion to close nomination is in order. So do I hear a second? All in favor to close nominations?
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Cloud, please call the roll of each member.
Dr. Pohl is going to do it.
Oh, I have to call the roll. Okay. I appreciate that, Dr. Pohl. Okay, so I'm going to call the roll, and please state the name of the individual that you support for vice chair. Ms. Basine.
Calogero.
Buffalo, DeCalagero. Dr. Martin.
Calogero.
Colonel Polson.
Ms. Thomas? Slaughter, excuse me. I was looking at her name tag.
Ms. Slaughter.
Thank you.
Thomas.
Slaughter.
Calogero. So with that said, I have 4 votes for DeCalagero and 3 votes for Ms. Slaughter. Congratulations, Ms. DeCalagero. Okay, with that said, we're going to move on to item number 2.03. I'm going to. 2.03, Dr. Pohl, recommendation for a board clerk.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recommend Ms. Karen Tanner as the board clerk. She's been in the position for about the past 5 years, and administration recommends she continue in that position.
You heard the recommendation for board clerk. Do I have a motion to that?
Recommendation for.
Is there a second?
I second. Oh,
Dr. Martin, second. Discussion? Hearing none. Call it again?
You
It's
can
a
have
new
this one.
procedure, okay.
And then Ms. Tanner will take over from there.
Okay. Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Buffalo? Aye. Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Colonel Polson?
Abstain.
Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. DeCalagero?
Aye.
Recommendation, motion passes. We're going to move on to item number 2.04. Dr. Pohl, recommendation for the superintendent designee.
Thank you again. I have a couple different recommendations due to a retirement. I would recommend Dr. Michael Catato stay in the position of superintendent's designee until his retirement at the end of this month. And following his retirement, I recommend both Dr. Sherry Agnew-Scott, our Chief Human Resources Officer, and Mr. Richard Fraley, our Chief Operations Officer, to be in the roles of designee.
Board members, you've heard the recommendation. May I have a motion to that effect? Second?
A second.
Discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Buffalo? Aye. Dr. Martin?
Aye.
Colonel Polson?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Thomas?
Aye.
Ms. DeCalagero?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. With that said, we're going to move on to 3.01, academic state of schools. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we have with us Ms. McGarity, who is going to review, as you've seen, a plethora of data that was uploaded. I have worked with Ms. McGarity, and we've talked through how to streamline this, knowing the board has read through the data already. And then we'll be prepared for questions at the end, of course. Yes.
Have the work session starting at 4 p.m. Is it
Loud.
So it was advertised as not starting till 4 p.m.
Then we can recess for, it's 3:40 now, so we're going to recess for 20 minutes.
I think that's a good idea.
See you in 20 minutes. I'm going to call us back from recess to get started on our work session. We're going to start with 3.01. Dr. Pohl?
All right, thank you again, and here's Ms. McGarity to share the data with us.
Good evening, Chair Moore Buffalo, Vice Chair DeCalagero, board members, and Dr. Pohl. I have the pleasure of presenting the state of the schools for Norfolk Public Schools tonight. Throughout the 24-25 school year, divisions in Virginia endured many changes. While that is true for Norfolk Public Schools ensured we navigated that change with intention, stayed the course for stability, and ensuring serving students was the focus of our course. This presentation is organized around 3 questions. How has accountability changed? What do the results show? And how is Norfolk Public Schools responding while staying focused on instruction? To answer those questions, the presentation is chunked into 2 sections with an appendix of slides that are for informational purposes only. The first section will be a review of the Virginia Accountability and Accreditation final outcomes of the 24-25 school year. The second section will dive into each component, highlighting data on Norfolk students' performance that led to the accountability outcomes. At the end of each section, I'll ask you to join me in celebrating our schools for all the hard work they did throughout the school year. Let's begin with section 1 with the accountability and accreditation outcomes by school. These visuals are intended as a reminder of the 2 systems in Virginia that we reviewed in a November school board meeting. The one on the left is a representation of the accountability system known as the SPSF, and on the right is the accreditation system. The 2 systems represent an explicit input-output review of schools. Virginia School Performance and Support Framework, the SPSF, is the explicit output system to review and report on student outcomes resulting in a performance category and possible federal identification for schools. Virginia's accreditation system is the explicit input system to review and report on implementation of school and/or division requirements, resulting in an accreditation status for each school. The 2 systems we'll discuss are listed here with the addition of the federal identifications layer of accountability. This frames the entire section that follows. Important context as we go through regarding the systems is that schools can have mixes of categories, identifications, and/or statuses. For example, a school may be fully accredited and still be identified as off track and may or may not be identified federally. Regarding performance on the SPSF, Norfolk has 43.9% of its schools performing on track and 56.1% off track. There are 0 schools in the needs intensive support and distinguished performance category when only considering the school's performance. We previously discussed that the SPSF does not round up the final total used to assign schools with a performance category. Due to this calculation rule by VDOE, it is important to mention for us that we had schools on the cusp of higher categories. Larchmont was half a point away from being distinguished, and Southside STEM Academy, Ocean Air Elementary, Lindenwood Elementary were less than half a point away from being on track. Had they rounded as they have in past accountability systems, these schools would have been in the higher category. VDOE's next layer to the SPSF overall performance is a more detailed review at the student group level, resulting in schools being identified in one of the possibly resulting in schools being identified in one of the 3 federal identification groups. Looking at targeted support and improvement, which we also call TSI, a school can be identified when 1 or more student groups performs below the designated threshold. Schools are identified annually and dropped by 1 performance category on the SPSF. For example, if a school's performance is on track, but they are TSI, they'll be dropped by 1 category to off track. Next is additional targeted support. They are identified every 3 years, reviewed and identified every 3 years, and they as well will drop their performance category just like TSI if identified. The final identification is comprehensive support and improvement, or CSI, where a Title I school can be identified if they are performing in the lowest 5% of schools in Virginia. Schools are identified and reviewed for exit every 3 years, and uniquely, CSI schools are not dropped in their performance level. Excitedly, we have some schools that exited their identification at the end of 24-25 school year. Southside STEM Academy was exited from CSI due to continuous improvement in reading and math indicators for all students. Zelia Gardens, Blair Middle School, Northside Middle, Norview Middle, Little Creek, Ocean View, Ocean Air, and St. Helena Elementary Schools were not re-identified for ATSI or TSI based on improvement in their identified student groups. Norfolk does have 2 new schools who entered CSI, 5 remaining CSI schools, and 7 identified as TSI. However, we have dropped by the amount of schools identified overall. The federal identifications for school changes the view of the final SPSF outcomes. It moves to 34.1% of schools are on track, 53.6% of schools are off, and 12.2% of schools are in the needs intensive support category. All bolded schools on the chart are the schools that were identified as TSI and dropped in their performance category. The recent JLARC report cited the procedure of changing performance category for federally identified schools of concern, which may bring changes in the future. Not for this year, though. This is a comparison of Norfolk with other divisions in our region and beyond, based on their school performance categories. Moving to school accreditation, all but 13 schools are fully accredited. The areas Norfolk schools were cited were either Section 4, which was leadership and support staffing, Section 9, federal program compliance, or both. The Section 4 staffing reported as out of compliance were due to unlicensed support staff such as media specialists, school counselors, GED teacher, and athletic director. Section 9 was due to lack of student improvement in the SPSF. All procedural areas were followed for Section 9, and it is currently unknown how this factors into the section at the time. We've sought guidance from VDOE, though. A formal accreditation appeal has been submitted and received by VDOE at this time. The Virginia Board of Education will review the appeal and determine if a change will be made for this year for the listed schools. Regarding celebrations, really the celebrations are Larchmont, Southside STEM, Ocean Air Elementary, and Lindenwood have been so close to on the cusp of those higher designations. Moving into Section 2 of this presentation, the data outcomes are based on each of the SPSF components. Most sections are structured the same, so we'll review the initial section and then move quickly through the remaining data while pointing out highlights and celebrations. As a reminder, the accountability system was being developed and changed throughout the school year. The results presented in this presentation reflect teaching and learning under changing accountability conditions. So moving into mastery and growth of reading, here are a review for reading to navigate of the barriers that we had to navigate throughout the school year. The top barrier on the list is not only the amount of vacancies in teacher positions, but the experience levels of teachers as well. This will be a general theme throughout, along with the other barriers listed, and a lot of those are just what the requirements were for this SPSF as we were going through the year. It's a lot of text here. I'm not going to go through it. The list is here for your review, but as barriers were navigated, Norfolk Public Schools stayed the course in a focused and intentional way, and will continue to move forward with that same intentionality. The course and steps forward for all areas are divided into 2 equally important chunks: improving the Tier 1 core instruction and targeted interventions and extensions. Specific elements are then listed in each chunk for review as needed. The first area is focusing on Tier 1 instruction, which ensures that every student receives consistent, high-quality, standards-aligned instruction as their first and most powerful opportunity for learning. When core instruction is effective, coherent, and accessible, the majority of students are able to meet grade-level expectations without the need for additional information. Tier 1 is where prevention happens and where system-wide improvement has the greatest return on investment. Couch that with staffing vacancies and years of experience of Norfolk teachers, the improvement of Tier 1 instruction is the most sustainable lever we can pull at this time. Simultaneously with improving and protecting Tier 1 instruction, Targeted interventions and extensions provide focused, short-term interventions for students who require additional support or enrichment beyond Tier 1. These supports are designed to respond to specific student needs identified with varying measures. The targeted interventions and extensions should never replace or impede on Tier 1 instruction time, but provide supports focused directly on individual student needs. These are our annual pass rates in the area of reading. The green arrows illustrate the student groups that improved when comparing them to the prior school year, so spring 25 to spring 24. And if there's a yellow star as well, there's been improvement each year from 22-23 to this current year. So multiple of our student groups have improved continuously over the years. Digging further into our annual pass rates, let's look at the outcomes at the performance level, which helps us understand the mastery index outcomes of the SPSF. The 4 performance levels on reading will also be on math on a future slide. They're pass advanced, pass proficient, fail basic, and fail below basic. And just as a quick reminder, pass advanced is the highest and fail below basic is the lowest. Growth compared to mastery of students gives us a glimpse at who is improving as a result of instruction based on performance levels. These data show that while mastery remains a challenge, a majority of students are demonstrating academic growth, which is critical in a transition year under new standards, while focus is given to the students who are in that failed below basic area. The top corner, left corner, high performing, high growth. Bottom right corner, low performing, no growth. For reading, let's celebrate again for reading. And the schools listed here, there's many schools listed, and they are celebrated for continuous improvement of proficiency by student groups and for large amounts of growth at their schools. All right, so we're going to move into the math section, and for math, science, and history, we're going to move much faster. They are laid out the same exact way. So with math, we have math barriers here. Again, noticing similarities of pieces along with what's added for math is also delays in textbooks and from the state. We have here the barriers of the course forward in math, organized into Tier 1 core instruction, ways of Tier 1 core instruction improvement, and also targeted interventions and extensions for focusing on students who have the higher needs. Math annual pass rates. So if there's a, same as reading, if there's a green arrow and a green arrow, they've improved over from the prior year, the yellow star, 2 years, and then if they have a purple star, then they have had 3 years of continuous improvement in these student groups, which we have a lot of purple stars, which is great that we are moving forward. Looking at the performance levels in math, you have the same 4 performance levels for math as we did with reading, pass advanced being the highest performing, fail below basic being the lowest performing. Looking at the growth, that comparison of the amount of growth, it is a similar pattern to reading. When we look at this same layout for reading and math at the student group levels, we are seeing the patterns across the board being exactly the same. In the area of celebrations for math, same thing, we have many schools listed here. They are listed for continuous improvement in proficiency in math as well as growth points. All right, science. Science, list of science barriers. We see a lot of the similar pieces here. A few little things move around, but they're pretty common across all the areas. And then moving forward, staying the course, protecting and improving that Tier 1 instruction, as well as improving and leveraging targeted interventions and extensions. Here are our science annual pass rates. With those pass rates, you see same exact thing. We have some that have 3 years, some 2 years, some just 1 year. So we are picking up some steam across the past 3 areas that we have looked at. Here's the science annual pass rates down into the performance level. Notice there are only 3. There is not a fail below basic level for science at this time. Science celebrations, again, many schools are on here that are schools for continuous improvement towards proficiency. There's no growth as part of science, so that isn't a piece that we have here. Next, we have history. History barriers, again, very similar to everything else. Some of it is, there's also, with history, one of the additional pieces that have been added is just available time due to tests, especially in grade 5, but some changes that were made this year should be mitigating some of that issue. History staying the course, moving forward, same things. It's not the exact same things within the list, but really appropriate things around protecting and improving Tier 1 instruction and focusing on targeted interventions. History annual pass rates, we're not seeing as much movement as we have been in the other areas, but we do have a few that have improved across at least the 1 year. And again, looking at the pass rates at proficiency level, history, just like science, only has 3 performance levels. History celebrations, these are lots of schools on here, same things though for continuous improvement. We're really looking at those annual pass rates when I keep mentioning the continuous improvement, so that is the base and foundation of all of the systems. As well as, this one is just like science, there's no growth, and so this piece of it is just that continued proficiency. Moving to EL progress, there are barriers for EL progress. Staffing is one, but it's a little different, where there was an SOQ change, so we've been hiring to get people in so that we can fill those spots. But as a reminder here, I want to get a little more specific about what the EL progress is. It is measured for kindergarten through grade 12 EL students, its growth spring to spring on the required English language proficiency test. Schools must have 15 students in grades K through 12 to have this calculation included in their SPSF. If not, the points allotted to EL progress are then redistributed to other areas. The recent JLARC report also spotlights this practice as a concern because other indicators become weighted heavier for some schools than they do when compared to others. So things can start to get muddy a little bit of what's going on when you're making those comparisons. The likelihood is this will change in the future, but it was not in place for this data set. So another, here, staying the course, moving forward. Again, a big focus is also getting those EL positions filled. Looking at the progress and proficiency data for EL, what this is comparing EL progress to proficiency. Progress monitors students' improvement year after year, and proficiency monitors the percentage of EL students meeting English language proficiency established by VDOE for the year. And that is all with that language proficiency assessment, not from SOLs. We have a state-level celebration here, so I want to highlight Larchmont Elementary. They were reported out by VDOE as one of the top 5 schools for EL progress in the state. So we want to make sure we really do highlight that exciting celebration. All right, continuing to move quickly, we're moving into graduation and readiness. With graduation, remember, the state has moved to using the 4-year graduation outcomes, and in another location, the 6-year, but of the federal graduation indicators. We've always talked about the Virginia on-time graduation, or the OGR, but we're going to quickly look at both of those. Graduation's unique to barriers unique to graduation, and how we've stayed the course and moving forward for graduation. Tier 1 instruction, it really is, we've got to have good Tier 1 instruction for students to be able to pass all the courses they need for graduation, so it really is just kind of hearkening back to those other areas. Virginia on-time graduation rate, if we look at the 4-year Virginia OGR, Norfolk has made a slight improvement in the OGR while the state's rate declined. As part of OGR, we have here, this is a slide we've looked at multiple times, where it is the different types of OGR completers. It's represented here by the student group as well. The difference with the first two bar cluster rates is the one on-time graduation rate includes diplomas only, and the other is the completion rate, which also includes diplomas and GEDs. Now looking here with the 4 years, so we just looked at what the OGR was, and so the blue bar here are your OGR rates, and then the yellow bar is the FGI 4-year. So this is a comparison of those two, and with where we've talked about the OGR already and the FGI, this is that piece comparison, the compared piece. The biggest differences are going to be between students with disabilities and English learners, and that's because they are legally allowed to stay longer. So they might not have earned their diploma by the 4th year, where this is calculated. So that piece of it, that's a lot of the reason that's happening, along with applied studies. They also look at the 6-year. So if we are, that 4-year is still that yellow bar, but moving to the right, when they look at the 6-year, it is with the applied studies diplomas included for readiness. That's the blue bar to the right, where we can see it is also applied studies. It is also where it is the any additional diplomas that have been earned standard or advanced since year 4. So they kind of keep tacking them on the end there. Graduation celebrations, I'm going to pull out, especially because they're here, Maury High School, improving their FGI. So that is a tough one to improve because it is only advanced and standard diplomas. And they surpassed Virginia's FGI. There are other schools listed here as well. All right, chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism, it's a readiness indicator, as well as it has its own unique set of barriers to navigate, and as well as the course moving forward. Tier 1 instruction is still included here. You may wonder why. The first intervention to get kids engaged is to have good engaging Tier 1 instruction, as well as targeted interventions that may be necessary for individual students. Here's over time, the last 5 years of chronic absenteeism. So we had a little bit of a backward slide this past year. But other than that, you can kind of see the whole historical view. We're still not back to pre-COVID. In celebrating, we have lots of schools celebrating. Lots of people did improve their rates. So, it's exciting that we're seeing it's heading in the right direction. Mathematics with the advanced coursework in middle school. The barriers and the course forward are the same exact thing as math, so we don't have that piece. But what this includes is passing assessments in Algebra 1 and Geometry in middle schools and any of our combined schools. These are just the rates overall, and then here we have enrollment, just to see, are we getting kids enrolled? And with the kids that we do have enrolled, which enrollment did go up for this past year in these courses, that we have, what are the percentages of students who are enrolled, what their demographics. I am really excited about this one as well, this celebration. I want to highlight on this slide that the middle schools listed here, which are Southside STEM Academy, Crossroads, and Academy for Discovery, that they had a 100% pass rate for their EOC math assessments in the spring. That is a very exciting one. It's a hard thing to do.
Am I right that all 3 of these schools are K
So,
schools?
yes, they're all combined schools.
Interesting.
I would agree. But it's very exciting to see these pass rates. These kiddos are leaving middle school, especially these ready for high school endeavors. 3E framework. This was one that was just a big barrier in itself. So the 3E framework includes an index of students who participate in enrollment, employment, or enlistment tasks to be ready for their post-secondary life. This area has been and continues to be the most challenging indicator to navigate regarding the guidelines and requirements. We have here courses forward. One of the big courses is us understanding more about, everybody understanding more and more about what's being calculated here. These are the tasks that students have the options for in this past year. This is changing moving forward. But for this data set, this is the completion rate of those any of those tasks. So we had 38.7% of students completed a task in enrollment, 54.7% of students completed a task in the area of employment, and 6.6% of students completed a task in enlistment. The tasks are going to be updated, mostly in the area of enlistment, for the upcoming school year. It's not fully clear how much change there will be, though. This indicator is another area JLARC cited in their report as concern and then followed up with recommended changes. Regardless of all of the challenges we had, through all of the barriers we had, Maury and Granby High School were still able to earn 80% or more of the points for their 3E indicator. Key takeaways from all of this to try and sum up all of the data we've just quickly gone through are: 1, accountability has changed, but our instructional focus has not. 2, results are a combination of progress and navigating challenges. 3, no schools fell below the lowest performance category threshold when considering performance only. 4, growth is happening for students. 5, these results are used to guide our course moving forward, including supports to schools. And 6, stability matters as we move forward in this work. In summary, Norfolk Public Schools has demonstrated improvement despite significant barriers and challenges, with noticeable gains across multiple indicators, along with no schools falling below the lowest performance threshold when considering overall performance. This progress affirms our direction while underscoring the importance of continuing the work ahead of accelerating Norfolk Public Schools student outcomes. One quick look at the totality of the celebrations. And Southside STEM Academy at Compostela had the most celebrations across the entire presentation in each area, which really does speak to a comprehensive improvement for the school. So they showed up the most times. As it gets smaller, they are showing up less and less, but again, all important. Then I am ready for questions. 26 minutes, though, not 20.
Okay, well, board members, you've heard the presentation. Are there any questions? And all put your hand up at once. Go ahead.
I have questions, but happy to defer to anyone else and go last.
Can I just make a statement?
Yeah.
I'm so proud of the work that's being done at Southside STEM Academy. And that's so notable, and those kids deserve that, and I'm just
Dr. James and her team
waiting
are
for this
phenomenal.
for a while and work. I know everyone's been working hard behind the scenes, but.
Move your mic closer.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just saying how proud I am of the progress being made at Southside STEM Academy. It's gotten a bad rap for a while, and I know everyone in that building has been working really hard to make sure that those students get on track, and they've more than gotten out of track. They've blown it out of the water, and I think that's really exciting.
Yes, I would agree.
Ms. Basing?
Yes. So there's a lot of great information here. So thank you again for walking us through what our results look like with this new framework. And I'm still, trying to get my handle on it as well. One of the biggest pieces, and I've been watching how other districts are also trying to communicate this in their communication plans, and I think everybody's trying to figure this out, the accreditation piece, which is the definition of it is so different than what we've been used to over the years. And so, it's easy, and I've seen the state pushing it out, just how are we as a district going to be communicating our accountability results, the school performance, which is really ultimately what, why we're here, why we exist, what people really want to know, how our students are doing. And the accreditation piece, which is really all the adult inputs, right?
Yeah.
So how are we as a district going to be communicating that out to our families and our community? And if if you're still in the process of trying to think through that, I understand, but I was just,
Yeah, and I'll take that, Ms. McGarity. So, with the late data shared with us that was confirmed by the state, will be similar to what we've done in years past, where at the school level, they'll be sharing their celebrations as well as their needs. It'll show up in their comprehensive school support plans that are, published online and put out every year. As a division, we'll work to create a website that shares the data differently now, and it'll share it in two different ways. It'll share our accountability and our accreditation. So we'll openly share the schools and where they fall in the 4 categories. And then we'll look at doing something over time as well, so that we can see movement over the categories over time. And then for the accreditation piece, we'll be very clear that it is adult inputs. Like, to be clear, one of our schools was accredited with conditions because we couldn't find a library media specialist. And in order to, we found out later that if we would have just said the position was vacant, that school would be accredited. So those are the kind of appeals that we have. And so once we hear back from those, we'll publicize that more. We're just waiting to hear back so we don't publicize one thing and then go back and publicize something different. We did get confirmation the appeals were received well before the deadline for the appeals from the VDOE. But really looking, and then also looking at what other divisions are doing. I've seen some of the smaller divisions have really nice graphics because they can fit like all the smaller school
right.
things on there, but, ours can be a little bit different. So as we go on, and then it won't be uncommon, I think, next year to kind of maybe take a different direction a little bit once we see what might be better of how to do it. But really trying to be transparent with our data as we have. And show the areas of celebration, but clearly the areas of growth that we need to see as well. And that's one thing the new system does do, is it really opens up and shows some areas of growth where we need to improve upon.
right. So kind of transitioning into that, thank you, Dr. Pohl, for that, because I know once we figure that out as a board member who's out in the community, I think it's important for us to have any high-level talking points that you feel would help us engage in those conversations, because, accreditation, has, just like I said, previously been one thing, but, that might be the first thing that they ask about, like, well, where are we? And so if you were to take what we have right now, that would be close to synonymous with what was previously accreditation. Would it be the on-track versus off-track percentages that would be, right? I mean, that's what I would get, but I just wanted to verify that.
And that's what we pretty much have been functioning off of, because the distinguish is supposed to be above and beyond what's expected. Of course, we want to all shoot for that, but on track, off track, and then looking at it at that performance before federal is applied. The federal identifications matter, but that dropping, and especially with JLARC really citing that practice as an issue.
Okay.
So really, because where are you performing, because we have the 12.2 that are needs intensive support, but really their performance was up and off track. And some of them were really close to even popping over into on track maybe, with that federal identification. So that's kind of that toss up. So we really try and talk about it from performance first.
Right, okay.
Let me extend on that a little bit, because it has been interesting to watch, even as media has brought out things. I do believe when we look at the past accreditation system, it does more lean towards the distinguished on-track, off-track, needs intensive support. So if you look at ours last year, we were just at around 56% accreditation. This year, we're 43.9% on track. If you look at before we get docked for the CSI or the TSI, ATSI schools.
Okay.
However, one of the talking points that we'll create a one-pager, we'll share is the fact that, right now it's with the EL progress, schools that don't have EL students, all the weights shift at that point. So that changes how this comes in. It's been interesting to watch, other divisions report out and saying, hey, we're 100% accredited now, and the accreditation is totally different.
Totally different.
And we could, once we get back the appeals, we'll probably be able to say we're highly accredited now, but it's a totally different definition.
Right.
So we'll work on some kind of a one-pager for communication, so you have it. So when you're at Civic League meetings or anywhere else, you're able to talk about that more. When they say, well, we saw this division's 100% accredited now, you can talk about, well, what that really means. Because, we've really been trying to be talking about the bifurcated system that we have now, and one's about inputs and one's about outputs.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and that I think will be really helpful to us. But to get to now the performance piece, so while we had a lot of growth in areas, we still have a lot of areas for improvement. And specifically, I wanted to, and I tried to ask this ahead of time because I wasn't sure if you were going to readily have this information, but what percentage of our African-American students in MPS would be in the distinguished and on-track schools?
I mean, I have it available, we dig down that far. And so with that, looking at it that way, or if we're looking at it, there's also differences if we're looking at it before federal ID and after. So again, kind of leaning on that performance piece of it. So before, Black students, that if we look at it before federal ID, 41% of them are in on-track schools, 33% if we look at it after federal ID. For looking at off-track, we're talking 58% before, 55 after, and then of the needs-intensive supports, it's only after, because they were dropped. Black students, it's 11% of the students are there.
But that's within 2 percentage points of where all schools fell, of all students fell.
Okay. And I'm asking these because when you look at the JLARC report too, one of the biggest indicators was SES,
Yes.
right? And so how we target our strategies, our resources and all of that is really why I was asking.
And across the
specifically about
board,
that.
SES is the highest it's the highest in each area, but it is the highest of our, in off-track, if we look at it as on, off, and needs after
Right,
the
okay,
federal ID. So SES, that really kind of rang true for us.
yeah,
Because as soon as I saw that, I kind of went digging in, like, let's see.
yeah,
And it does.
it does, right.
Yeah.
And I suspect it does. It always kind of has been, obviously.
And that was one of the fears going into it of a former state board member that they brought up at the beginning, is that really,
Yes.
kind of the way they're doing this really is going to just highlight more of poverty
Right.
concerns than it is.
Yeah, I watched those meetings and
So-
that was, but to that end, it's what can we do? We are responsible for so much. How do we advocate for ourselves with the things that we need? And then, so that we can better support our students. And so there is this slide 20, if we could go to that. It was where 61% were not demonstrating growth for reading. If you could speak to us a little bit about, so in my understanding, so they fail below basic and then did not earn growth, so 61% of students.
Yes. Sorry,
Right.
I'm listening to you while I was watching.
Well, I'm
the
also,
change.
I'm looking at you for
Yes.
making sure I'm understanding this chart correctly. So
Yes.
what does that, so for those 61%, so is that 61% of those students did not show growth?
Correct.
So what do we know, what are the characteristics of those students that did not show growth? And, what do we learn from that, I guess?
So with that 61% is 696 kids out of the whole division. So we got to remember that even though it feels like that is a big number, it's not saying that that's not important, but that is, of that set of kids, we're really looking at, SES is the highest. So once again, this is where those things start to become highlighted, just like JLARC mentioned, followed by Black students and students with disability as the majority of that group. And so, but what this is saying, we use this information to look at it a little differently, just to say, okay, here's your student group, we need to do this different for the student group, but it's also how are you, that group breaks up into different performance, as the slide before this shows. And so this is kind of showing us how are how's our instruction landing for the different performance levels? So different performance abilities of kids maybe, and also those targeted programs. But that 61%, we got to remember, does not always mean that it's not being done, right? We're not intervening and targeting. So this is what we talked about with the math specialists when I did a training with them around this, and we look at it by student groups and everything. But it's also remembering that, as we talked about that tier 1 instruction, that's a lever. It's a huge lever. These are also the set of kids who qualify for every intervention that is out there. So we have to be really careful, and we've heard Ms. Nash talk about this during the reading presentations for the goals and things like that, making sure we're not pulling them from tier 1 instruction to go do targeted intervention. Because now we're losing the big lever of instruction, and the targeted interventions could be becoming that. That's why this year is one of the big pushes from curriculum instruction is monitoring that tier 1 instruction is not getting taken over by targeted interventions. And so it could be that. We don't know for sure if it's that. So that's really one of those, we want to dig into that. But it could allude to that maybe what the targeted interventions are, that there's something different that needs to be done. Schools have this for everyone. We did training with all the schools, so they have the information and those kinds of things. So we just have to remember that we're talking about how instruction is falling out for kids here, not you need more targeted things, because we just start pulling them out of the good instruction at the first step.
Right, okay, thank you. And Mrs. Moore Buffalo, if I wanted to pause there, I
I
have a
was going to
couple.
ask, is there anyone other that have any questions? Okay, Ms. Basine, you may proceed.
Okay. So with the math, so one of the things that came up with math was around well, maybe not just math, but was around textbooks, not being HQIM. Can you elaborate on that? Because I know just a year ago, we adopted textbooks.
Yeah, so it was, the point that was made was that VDOE was very delayed with the standards and then giving textbooks that were aligned and qualified. So they didn't give us a textbook list to match the curriculum. So when we actually did our RFP and everything else as the state was doing theirs because they were so delayed in that process. So it
Okay.
wasn't implemented as quickly as it could have been because the VDOE was delayed in the process of putting out their list of acceptable textbooks.
Okay, so the textbooks that because I went back and I was like, we spent last year.
Ours are
3.6.
ours are aligned, they're HQIM, we're good. It was the delay of the VDOE.
Okay.
So part of the purpose was, we tried, again, with transparency, they've taken away crosswalk years. We're implementing things as we're going. I like to say we've jumped out of the plane and we're sewing the parachute at the same time in some instances. That's happening. But at the same time, we're trying to change our course to, if that's the direction where we're going, we need to be ready to meet that direction. But just pointing out that these were some barriers we faced, and now we're ready. And we were much more prepared this year because as we started the year, Ms. McGarity and the ARA team had all the documents for teachers. So they had all of this already prepared based off our notes, for their current class based on how they performed last year, so that we knew starting the year where were they falling and what deficiencies did they have and what strengths did they have.
Okay, so just wanted to clarify that our textbooks are aligned and all, yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
State delays
It was the
with
state
those
delays.
other materials coming.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and let Mr.
Yes, yeah, go Roz.
What percentage of our student population is Asian? Because they're a statistical anomaly here, but, if it's 1 or 2% of our student population,
It is.
2%,
Yeah, it's like
1.9,
2%.
it's right.
and
It was
what
like 1.9 for,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's about 2%. And so students with disabilities make up what percentage of our population?
About 18%. I think we went up this year from prior years, but we're about 18%.
English learners.
English learners,
A little less, I think it's
I
like
think it's a little
14.
less. I can get back with
I
you.
think English learners, I want to say is 14%.
I want to say 14 also, or is sticking out in my mind, but I could find out for sure.
Yeah, it's just hard for me.
EL is one that keeps growing, so it's ever changing, it feels like.
It's hard for me to quantify myself, you know, what impact these different groups are having if I don't know
What are the totals?
what are their totals, like.
I have it. So our Asian is 1.9.
I remember.
Our EL is 7.1. And our students with disability is 17.7. And we stayed pretty level last year. The group with the highest growth was our students with disability. And then actually our biggest decline was our SES. They declined by 1.8 points. Absolutely.
Helps me
Yeah, nope, I get
understand
that.
the numbers a little bit better.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Type of disability, because I would think that number would be a little higher,
That's all disabilities.
all disabilities?
Any child with, that's any child with an IEP.
IEP.
Any one of our students with an IEP, we have 17.7% of our student population that has.
But I'm sure we have students that hasn't been recognized yet,
There might be
that maybe
students
should.
that doesn't include kids who maybe have been referred for evaluation.
We're in the process, and these are our September 30 numbers, so there could be a student who's in the process at that point, but we float right around that number. We've grown a little bit in the past years, but, and that also doesn't include our students who might have a 504 at this point.
Right.
Gonna
It's
say-
just IEPs.
I was going to ask, because we
Okay.
do have students with disabilities that have 504s, so it would be nice to know what that true total percentage is if we were able to somehow parse out the students with 504s that have disabilities.
So we
Well, there-
can, but know that it's reported, the way it's reported is with students just with IEPs. So all of our data reporting there that's how these numbers
Right,
fall out.
but those 504 plans affect the other categories as well. So it would be good to know, you know, how many students that we have that are potentially already learning challenged, you know, and things that we do.
Because that would help with staffing too, correct?
Not necessarily. The 504s wouldn't, the IEPs absolutely do.
504s could be as simple as double time on a test or.
And it could also be temporary because of an injury. You know, they vary so widely, 504s do. Right,
The 504s are focused solely on accommodations.
Right.
For work, time, assessments, those kinds of things, not specially designed instruction delivered by a service provider. So that's the difference with the reporting of the numbers, why the 504 is not included.
Right, because 504 can be something as innocuous as you broke your leg, you need to take the.
Elevator.
Absolutely important, absolutely needed, but doesn't have that service provider person attached to it.
Jane, are you
I
having?
have two quick questions
Yes,
that
two
I'll
quick
round out
questions.
this presentation with. So Virtual Scholars Academy and Rosemont, so are those two well, Rosemont really has AOIS and Young Scholars. Are their scores
They go
still
back to the
going back to
homeschool.
the homeschool? Same with Virtual Scholars Academy, right?
We provide them their data
But they have,
parsed out that they're able to work from because it impacts.
right,
So they have their data to work from.
okay.
And their kind of formative version, so all of the things where teachers have it, that all goes there too, but they're back in their home schools.
But they go back to their, same with Virtual Scholars Academy, okay. From a staffing standpoint, I think, not so much AOIS and Young Scholars, but Virtual Scholars Academy, how our students are doing in that, and,
How are they doing in that?
well, yeah, how they're performing, how they're doing, how we're supporting.
The top side of, if we look at it pulled out by responsible serving schools,
Yeah.
the kids are doing well. in all of the areas, yeah.
And they're highly monitored.
I was
And
gonna
we
ask.
also, we also contract out special ed teachers to work with them on their IEPs online specifically. So if they aren't performing well and online's not for them, we pull them out mid-year and we have them go to their home school.
You want to say they have to meet a threshold?
I have a quick question. Are homebound students included in virtual learners, or is that separate?
Separate.
Okay, and they're included in the regular numbers?
Yes, they're in their homeschool they're attached to.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All good? Sure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot to get through. We appreciate it.
So with that said, we're going to move on to 3.02, graduation coach update. Dr. Pohl?
And we have our new senior coordinator, well, new this year at least. She's been here a while now, and she's a returning a staff member who was in Norfolk previously. So
Recognize her face.
Dr. Moore is going to present, oh, no, sorry, Ms. Moore is going to present, our information graduation coach, and she did bring some phone of friends with her who are going to be a part of the presentation for Maury as well. So take it away, Ms. Moore.
All right, well, good evening. Board Chair Moore Buffalo, Vice Chair DeCalagero, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Pohl, and other distinguished guests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I welcome the opportunity to share more about the impact of our graduation coaches and the critical role that they play in actually supporting student success, persistence, as well as on-time graduation. Our graduation coaches, they actually work at the intersection of academics, attendance, as well as student engagement. This evening, I intend to highlight how graduation coaches influence student outcomes, address unique, diverse needs of student populations, and contributes, of course, to the district's broader goals of accountability and long-term success. Now, recognizing that we've had an opportunity to engage in the state of the schools overview, as well as previous exposure that the board has had, I wanted to simply highlight the slide that appears before us at this time, slide 2. Our graduation coaches play a vital role in helping both our students as well as our schools meet graduation requirements and state accountability expectations. Their work directly supports students in understanding and fulfilling diploma requirements, including verified credit, course completion, attendance expectations, and on-time graduation benchmarks. Importantly, the work of our graduation coaches, it aligns with the support and goals outlined in Virginia's SPSF framework by focusing on student progress, engagement, as well as completion. Our graduation coaches contribute to improved performance on key accountability indicators, including graduation rates, chronic absenteeism, as well as post-secondary readiness. As we look at this slide, again, I recognize that the board is familiar with the 3E readiness framework, and again, that has been highlighted, but I want to specifically connect it again to the work that our graduation coaches fulfill across our schools. Our graduation coaches play a critical role in helping our students demonstrate readiness with that framework, enrollment, employment, as well as enlistment, which reflects a distinct commitment to actually preparing our students for life beyond high school. Whether a student's preparing for college, entering the workforce, pursuing military service, our graduation coaches are providing individualized guidance to help students complete coursework, earn high-demand credentialing, participate in meaningful experiences, and develop the habits needed for success beyond graduation. At the same time, the student-centered support allows schools to document readiness indicators that contribute to those state accountability measures. When students demonstrate readiness, schools earn points towards our state's performance framework, reinforcing the connection that exists between strong student outcomes and school success. In this way, our graduation coaches help ensure students graduate with purpose and direction, while also supporting schools in meeting those state expectations for readiness and accountability. As we take a look at the next two slides, it actually happens to organize goals that are broken across each of our 5 high schools. Pictured at this time, we actually happen to have Booker T. Washington High School and Granby High School, and the following slide will feature Lake Taylor High School, Morey High School, as well as Norview High School. But I want to highlight the fact, again, the graduation coaches are pivotal in actually advancing the graduation and readiness goals outlined in each of our schools' comprehensive school support plans. Their work is intentionally aligned to the strategies schools have identified to improve student outcomes, particularly for students who need additional guidance to stay on track. By monitoring progress, addressing barriers, and providing individualized support, our graduation coaches help schools move forward from planning into action. They support efforts to, again, increase that on-time graduation rate, connect with the attendance, and help our kids prepare to demonstrate post-secondary readiness. They are a critical link between school improvement goals and student readiness, again, helping our schools meet those expectations. And as you look across the graduation goals or readiness goals for each of the schools, you will see a theme that is tied in where our schools are focusing on specific measures that they expect to see improvements in over the course of the year relative to graduation, readiness. As we advance, you'll actually notice that we also have consideration for attendance because, again, chronic absenteeism plays a significant role in making sure that each of our cohorts are able to move forward in accordance with those timeline expectations that have been designated for our kids. And certainly I won't read this to the board. I recognize everyone had an opportunity to scan that information. Of course, I did want to have an opportunity to share images of each of our graduation coaches. Again, this evening, I'm fortunate to be joined by graduation coaches from Morey High School. Mr. Price will actually take the lead in giving us a little bit of insight in terms of the daily practices of our graduation coaches, but I wanted to share with the board the faces of the members of our team who are in the trenches day to day, making sure that we're supporting all of the kids that we happen to serve in the district. And we do actually have one member who is not pictured here as they are actually on leave at this time. But we certainly want to recognize them, which is exactly why we have them pictured here this evening. Each of these individuals represent a deep commitment to our students and the success of our schools. Their work happens oftentimes behind the scenes, right? If we don't have this slide here, you may walk past them and not even know who they are. But please know that they are meeting one-on-one with students, they're problem-solving barriers, engaging with families, and ensuring that none of our students are overlooked. They're advocates, they're mentors, and I really like to think of them as problem solvers, right, in terms of helping our students navigate academic requirements while also building confidence, which is so key, and a sense of purpose. Collectively, these graduation coaches advance graduation and readiness goals for each of their schools daily. Their dedication directly supports the improvements that we've talked about with student outcomes and strengthening the capacity of the schools overall in meeting those statewide expectations. We're grateful, certainly, for their professionalism, persistence, and their unwavering focus on student success. Their impact is not only reflected in data, and accountability measures, but more importantly, in the lives of the students that they support. Here, you'll notice that I've actually tried to include consideration for how our graduation coaches are supporting students in each of the cohorts in each of our high schools. As you take a look at this slide, you'll notice that it's broken to actually share what we have at each of the schools. One coach will support cohort 2026 and 2027, and then we have another coach who's designated to support members of cohort 2028 and cohort 2029. So, of course, we refer to our students in that manner, because as soon as our students enter high school, the expectations relative to on-time graduation within that 4-year time span, it begins. So wherever it talks about cohort 2026, historically, those are your seniors, right? All the way to the opposite end, 2029, those of course, are our freshmen. The other thing that I'd like to mention here is that our district has intentionally allocated 2 graduation coaches to each of our 5 high schools to ensure consistent support across sites while remaining responsive to student needs. However, I would also like to share within this model, 2 of our high schools have graduation coach-to-student ratios that are lower than the others. And that allocation reflects an equity-based approach, recognizing that some school communities require additional, more intensive support to address graduation and readiness challenges. However, I would ask that we continue to keep this slide in mind until I reach the end of the presentation for the great ask of support.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Okay, all right. Continuing on, our graduations, again, support all of the students that we have, those who are on track as well as those who are off track. And we really want to make sure that we emphasize that our graduation coaches are committed to supporting all of our learners by ensuring every student has a clear and supported path to graduation. They participate in weekly graduation meetings where student progress is reviewed through data analysis, allowing schools to identify concerns early and respond with targeted support. Using this data, graduation coaches help plan, implement, and monitor individualized high school graduation plans that reflect each student's needs, goals, and readiness pathways. In addition to prevention and support, our graduation coaches actively engage in dropout retrieval efforts. This is where we're working to reconnect students who have disengaged from school and help them return to a pathway towards earning a diploma. That is certainly our goal. Through consistent collaboration, data-driven decision-making, and personalized support, our graduation coaches help students move forward, whether that means staying on track, because there's also a rhythm to that, right, to help our kids stay on track, getting back on track, or re-engaging after they've had some time away. Here's an image that really just tries to provide a visual in terms of the mechanisms which actually prompt action. Our graduation coaches are consistently looking at attendance, behavior, and course performance to make determinations about how to move forward. So our graduation coaches activate evidence-based practices each time they monitor the progress of all students and proactively intervene when students show early signs relative to attendance, behavior, or academic challenges. This continuous monitoring allows our graduation coaches, again, to work in a proactive manner with our students, families, and school teams to address barriers, adjust supports, and reinforce positive progress. Whether a student needs academic assistance, attendance support, or behavioral interventions, our graduation coaches collaborate to make sure that the right supports are in place. Here, what I've tried to do is provide data snapshots. The next few slides actually offer data snapshots. This one is a data snapshot for the district as it relates to attendance. You'll notice that it's broken into tiers where we have consideration for our students that are not demonstrating any type of attendance issues. Those are the students that we say we have strong attendance or perfect attendance. It's further divided all the way into consideration for our kids who are experiencing chronic absenteeism, which of course we recognize a definition for that that's recognized nationwide is when we have a student who has missed 10% or more of the time in which they are to be actually engaged in school. And so you'll notice that we've broken this out by cohort. You're able to see exactly what we have from 2026 all the way through 2029 cohort. Attendance is a non-academic barrier which offers critical insight about support needs. As a result, graduation coaches work with our attendance technicians. They work with counselors, teachers, and other key school staff members to determine root causes of absenteeism. When attendance metrics indicate concerns, schools respond by initiating individual meetings with students and families. In doing so, schools are then able to proceed with evidence-based practices by providing intensive individual supports to students who've fallen off track or face significant challenges to success. Based on what's learned, schools implement appropriate student-centered interventions such as check-in, check-out systems, mentoring relationships, and connections to wraparound services. And I happen to see Dr. Morris here. He actually leads that capacity for us at the district level. These supports are designed to address both academic and non-academic needs while reinforcing consistent attendance as well as engagement. One of the things we always like to talk about relative to attendance is that attendance always needs to partner with engagement. It is not sufficient for our kids to simply attend. We need them to attend and engage, to have expectations for our kids to satisfy promotion criteria and certainly progress with graduation expectations. Moving forward, here's a snapshot of data. Again, it is broken by cohort. The data that has been pulled here actually reflects the percentage of referrals that resulted in an in-school suspension or an out-of-school suspension. It does not include the numbers for kids who have received a non-suspension consequence, and that would be something such as a warning or an after-school detention or Saturday detention, things of that nature. However, we can certainly provide an addendum to provide even greater detail on what these happen to look like. Did I happen to see your hand?
Yeah, I can.
Let me take my glasses off so I can actually see people.
Yeah, let's go through it. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I took my glasses off to see people. Glasses are for words. Going back. All right, thank you. So the other thing that I wanted to share relative to the behavior consideration, we look at the discipline data as a part of our monitoring efforts. By reviewing patterns in behavior incidents, our graduation coaches and other key members of school staff are able to identify students who may need additional support to remain engaged in school. This data helps our graduation coaches collaborate with school teams to address underlying issues, connect students, again, with appropriate interventions, and reduce barriers to those barriers that stand in the way of academic progress. Using discipline data proactively allows support for positive behavior while keeping students focused on graduation and readiness goals. This is a snapshot that brings into focus consideration of core subject summary. All right. Now, our graduation coaches, again, they take a look at early warning metrics that are tied in with attendance, behavior, or course performance. I wanted to provide a snapshot here. This snapshot is simply focused in on core subject areas. However, we recognize, of course, that our graduation coaches have the responsibility of not just looking at core subject performance, but they have to look at the broader spectrum, because we know in order for our kids to satisfy graduation criteria, there are certain other courses that they have to be able to attain, the health and physical education requirements, foreign language requirements, things of this nature. But I wanted to include this snapshot just to give the board and the viewing public a feel for the scope of the work that our graduation coaches take on a daily basis. So again, they review the overall course performance to identify students who are marginally passing. This is what this data reflects. Kids who are marginally passing or actually maybe just beneath passing at this particular point. This early identification allows schools to respond before credit loss occurs. This is exactly what we're trying to do. We want to know that information as soon as possible to be able to intervene, try to ascertain root cause, work with students directly as well as families to leverage support in a timely manner to help our kids actually regain their focus. So our coaches help our students maintain focus on accumulating credits to satisfy those graduation requirements. Additionally, they work with school teams to connect students with targeted support such as tutoring, academic recovery, and progress monitoring. All right. And the other thing that I wanted to share before progressing here is that when we look at the percentages that are reflected here for, again, students who are marginally passing or may actually be experiencing failure. This was based off of the last marking period. The next marking period actually closes in the upcoming week, January 14th. But when we look at this, we have to have consideration for, again, the full scope of service that our graduation coaches are providing. Some of the kids that are nestled within the numbers that are on the screen are actually engaged in higher coursework as well. There are times where we will have honor students, students who are actually engaged in AP level work as well as IB, who grapple with the complexity of the content that happens to be before them. This is why it's so important for our graduation coaches, again, to stand shoulder to shoulder, work in collaboration with members of the team to get to the heart of what's going on and support our kids. But I just wanted to share that because many times there can be a misconception that our graduation coaches only work with a certain tier of students. They support all of our students to make sure that we continue to progress. Lastly, I wanted to return to take a look at the quarterly dropout rates. Now, I know that Ms. McGarity had an opportunity to share quarterly dropout rates with the board in a previous meeting. And at that time, quarter one data was available, and we were celebrating because we recognized that the numbers are actually lower, right? We were at 11.5%. We continue to monitor dropout, not on a quarterly basis. We monitor it weekly. And so December, I think I put the date up there. Yes, December 15th. During the week of December 15th, our dropout rate was actually that of 11.83%. So I wanted to share that with you. It's not final because, of course, the quarter has not closed out, but I wanted to share that with the board to highlight the fact that that remains a metric that's on the radar of our graduation coaches, coupled with supports to be able to reclaim those students in advanced learning. So it shows that our dropout rate continues to be lower than it was during the same time in the previous year. It reflects sustained efforts to identify at-risk students early and provide those timely targeted supports. Ongoing monitoring of dropout data allows schools to respond quickly, strengthen re-engagement strategies, and maintain momentum in keeping students connected and on track for graduation. So we look forward to being able to continue to reclaim in this area. And then I just wanted to highlight some additional aspects that our graduation coaches fulfill in serving the students that we happen to have, and you'll notice that over the course of the next two slides. Our graduation coaches, they support not only consideration with the dropout rate, but they engage in those weekly on-time graduation meetings. In each of our high schools, we are hosting on-time graduation meetings every week. It is common to find either a school principal or a school assistant principal working directly alongside our graduation coaches and other key members of the school to look at exactly where our kids are with being on track, off track, what adjustments are we making in real time. We intervene early and often. They also monitor credit recovery, right, to guide progress. And then you also notice the importance of being able to connect our students and families with resources. contingent upon what we learn in terms of root causes. I won't continue to share that information that happens to be available on the screen for review, but the graduation coaches are supporting our kids while they are in school with the realities of what they're taking on to continue to advance progress. And so at this time, what I want to do is actually invite two speakers. And it's funny, I didn't see those two speakers stand. I'll re-cue.
Should say it again.
This is our queuing line. Okay. At this time, I would like to invite two speakers who will share perspectives, just to further color in the work that goes on with our graduation coaches in collaboration with the administrative team. But they will share perspectives from both the school leadership perspective and direct practice regarding the impact of our and direct regarding the impact of our graduation coaches. First, we will have Mr. McCracken. He is assistant principal at the illustrious Maury High School, but he will speak to us from the perspective of the school administrator, sharing highlights in terms of the importance of that collaborative partnership with graduation coaches and how that collaboration supports improved graduation outcomes. We know that we will be able to feast upon what he will share. After which, we will be able to hear remarks from Mr. Price. Mr. Price is also from the illustrious Maury High School. He is a senior graduation coach, and he will speak in terms of daily practices that our graduation coaches engage in and how that advances graduation and post-secondary readiness. After that time, I will return just to share a few closing remarks and then invite any comments and questions.
Good evening, School Board Chair Buffalo, Vice Chair DeCalagero, valued members of the school board, student representatives, Superintendent Dr. Pohl, and esteemed members of Central Administration and colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to share an administrator's perspective on the impact of graduation coaches. My name is Michael McCracken, and I am currently an assistant principal at Maury High School. I speak to you today wearing two lenses. First, as an assistant principal overseeing our multi-tiered systems of support team, and second, as someone who previously served as a graduation coach. That lived experience matters because it fundamentally shapes how I understand the work, the data, and most importantly, the student behind the numbers. At Maury High School and across the district at every high school, our MTSS teams meet throughout the week. These meetings bring together graduation coaches, behavioral specialists, student data specialists, attendance staff, counselors, SEAS counselors, and teachers. This work is not isolated to one building or one program. It is a coordinated district-wide effort rooted in collaboration and shared responsibility. Graduation coaches are not a supplement to this work. They are a cornerstone of it. When we talk about chronic absenteeism, we often begin with quantitative data. Attendance percentages, missed instructional minutes, course failures. That data is important. It helps us identify patterns, allocate resources, and measure outcomes. But what data alone cannot capture is why a student isn't coming to school, or why, when they do, they may not be ready to learn. Graduation coaches help us uncover that story, and they do so by going beyond the walls of our buildings and into student lives. They meet families where they are, sometimes literally in their homes, to understand the barriers that are invisible in a spreadsheet. Lack of stable housing, no electricity, no running water, inadequate clothing, limited access to hygiene products. These are not isolated circumstances. These are real, recurring challenges that directly impact a student's ability to attend school consistently and engage academically. Graduation coaches also play a critical role in re-engaging students who have disconnected from school altogether. Students who, at one point, may not have believed graduation was possible. Across the district, they assist in recovering dropouts, rebuilding trust with families, and removing barriers that once made graduation feel out of reach. Whether it's addressing attendance gaps, credit recovery, transportation challenges, or unmet basic needs, their work helps ensure students are not just enrolled, but positioned to walk across the stage and earn their diploma. Through partnerships coordinated by graduation coaches, we've been able to connect students to care closets, essential resources, and community supports. That coordination matters because before a student can focus on grades, test scores, or graduation requirements, they need dignity, stability, and trust. I know this firsthand. As a graduation coach, I had experiences that were eye-opening and humbling. You gain a deeper understanding when you see the environment a student returns to after the school day ends. It reframes how we interpret attendance data, it changes how we respond to behavior, and it reinforces that progress is not always linear, but it is possible when relationships come first. I want to commend the district leadership for recognizing this need and ensuring that each high school has a minimum of 2 graduation coaches. That decision reflects a commitment to a holistic approach, one that acknowledges academic achievement is inseparable from social, emotional, and environmental factors. This is not to say that graduation coaches are not focused on academics. They absolutely are. They monitor grades, credits, testing requirements, and graduation pathways, but they understand that academic success cannot be sustained without addressing the conditions that make learning possible. I'll share one example that illustrates this balance. We had a student who was supported all year by teachers, interventionists, and graduation coaches to prepare for an SOL test. Instructionally, the student was ready. However, the night before that test, that student slept in a car with their siblings and a parent. When they arrived at school the next morning, they were physically exhausted and emotionally overwhelmed. That context doesn't appear in the data, but it explains the outcome. Because our team understood the student's story and responded with targeted, family-centered support, the student was able to stabilize, graduate with honors, and through coordinating partnerships coordinated by our graduation coaches, transition into permanent housing, changing not only an academic trajectory, but a life trajectory. The work we do every day supported by graduation coaches is about bridging that gap. It's about ensuring students know they are more than a number, more than a data point, and more than a single assessment result. Every student has a story, and it is our responsibility to learn it so we can respond with equity, understanding, and intention. Graduation coaches help us transform adversity into opportunity by honoring both the quantitative data we analyze and the qualitative realities our students live. That balance is where meaningful change happens. So on behalf of our students, our families, and our schools, I want to sincerely thank the school board and district administration for your continued investment and support of these invaluable positions. Your commitment allows us to meet students where they are, address barriers before they become outcomes, and ensure that every student has a pathway to graduation and success beyond our walls. And as always, our doors are open. We welcome you to come see this work in action, to see how the words I've shared with you this afternoon are matched by daily practice in our schools. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Wesley Price, graduation coach at Maury High School, who will share his additional perspective on this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the school board and our interim superintendent, Dr. Pohl. I'd like to take a few moments to share the daily work of a graduation coach with a primary focus on our graduating seniors and the systems in place to ensure that they successfully reach graduation. The graduation coach position is different at every school, but at my school, we have an open door policy. In fact, on our door, we have a sign that reads, "Puzzled about graduation? Stop here." This invites students in and gives seniors an opportunity to utilize the space daily to ask questions about credits, grades, transcripts, and graduation status. Each day, we closely monitor senior progress using our academic tracking systems. We proactively identify students who may be off track and meet with them individually to review graduation requirements line by line. These meetings are intentional, and students never leave without documentation, such as updated transcripts, graduation checklists, and most importantly, supports, so that they clearly understand their path to graduation. A major focus of our work for all students is preparation for life after high school through the 3 E's: enlistment, enrollment, and employment. We coordinate military recruiting events, assist with job searches, support college applications and essays, and guide undecided students through interest and career surveys. We also play an active role in MTSS meetings, like Mr. McCracken said, where we collaborate closely with parents and a multidisciplinary team that includes the assistant principal, behavior specialists, attendance technicians, SEAS counselors, and attendance secretaries. A strong emphasis in these meetings is placed on attendance and chronic absenteeism. As we know, consistent attendance is directly tied to graduation success. Through MTSS, we take a deeper look at students' academic progress, attendance patterns, and personal circumstances. This allows us to truly meet students where they are. In some cases, that support extends beyond the school building through home visits and connections to resources such as clothing, food, or furniture. Removing these barriers is vital to keeping students engaged and on track to graduate. In addition to supporting enrolled students, we are actively involved in dropout recovery. When students disengage or leave school, we go into the communities to find them. This often includes multiple home visits, ongoing outreach to reconnect with students and their families. Many of these students will still need a significant number of credits, so we work with them to identify alternative pathways to completion, including GED and other flexible options, ensuring they still have a viable path to earning a credential and building a future. While our primary focus is on graduating seniors, we also support freshman students through the Freshman Transition Program, as well as early graduation requirement sessions that explains what it means to be on track and off track, helping prevent future graduation issues. In closing, the role of graduation coach is about more than tracking credits. It is about celebration, collaboration, accountability, and advocacy, ensuring every student has the support, information, and resources needed to graduate and succeed beyond high school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so in closing, we wanted to simply share next steps in terms of our work. Of course, we will make sure our graduation coaches continue to inform our students and families, not just about requirements, but actually how they are able to successfully progress in a manner that's on time. We also have consideration with supporting the latest adjustments from VDOE relative to SOL requirements. We recognize that that is a moving dynamic for us, and I know that Ms. McGarity spoke about that in a previous board meeting as well. That impacts the verified credits for our students. And then, of course, we remain interested in exploring additional viable options to support students who have credit deficits that we are really working to overcome. We certainly request consideration for additional allocation of graduation coaches. This is where I tried to allude earlier. I don't know if you remember. It was a slide that talked about the staffing allocation, and certainly we are grateful to have the allocation that we have, but I know that the board also has consideration for the numbers, and we certainly want to operate in an equitable manner, and I also recognize that the numbers are higher in some of our other schools, and we could also use the support there as well. When you have a graduation coach that's responsible for supporting, 700, 800 students is tough. You're meeting with them on a weekly basis, and you're really trying to make sure that the relationship piece demonstrates trust, respect, consideration for exactly what's going on. So we just wanted to share that, as possible consideration. And with that, certainly, we welcome an opportunity to take on questions or engage in discussion at this time. Thank you.
Just 1 second,
Real-
Ms. Slaughter.
You're real quick, if you don't mind. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to also point out Principal Karen Berg is here as well, who does a great deal of support. I'd like to thank Mr. McCracken and Mr. Price for their hard work and invite them back up for any questions they may have. And on their way back up, I'd like to also commend Mr. Price for his lanyard, because that is a wonderful choice of lanyards.
We're not
as
going to
well.
talk about the lanyard.
Yeah, we're not, because I almost threw up.
And thank you so much, Dr. Pola. I'm so sorry I forgot about that. But of course, Ms. Berg is always supportive, and she is here with us. And as soon as I had actually shared that with us, I knew she was on board to be able to support us. So thank you so much, Ms. Berg. Please forgive me for the oversight.
Thank you. Well, Before I get Ms. Slaughter, I'll say go Chicago Bears, but Ms. Slaughter, go ahead.
Commanders, excuse me. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's really good to hear the work that our graduation coaches are doing. I know it's not easy, especially when you're not just dealing with academics, you're dealing with life and helping our students and their families navigate life, and that can be very difficult at times. So thanks so much for that. Realistically, what should the ratio be? That's my first question. Honestly and realistically.
Are we asking for me? I see Dr. Pohl leaning.
Well, I think it varies on the data because, you know, the ratio, you also have to look deeper in the data of what is the dropout rate, what's the graduation rate of the specific schools, where are the higher need students versus, you know, not. So when we placed 2 per high school, like Ms. Moore said earlier, it was purposeful because we knew the higher need schools were our lower population schools already. So we knew they had a different line of work to do. You know, in an ideal world, you know, our ratio would be more similar to our school counselor ratios, but, you know, unfortunately, budgetary restraints hold us back from that right now.
Up to your second question, but can I ask a follow-up to do we keep data on the percentage of students that the graduation coaches touch? So like at Granby High School or at Maury, when you have like 700 or 800, do we keep data on the percentage of students who actually utilize the graduation coaches? So like, you know, then you could really see where the discrepancies are if.
Yeah, they keep the data at the school level. Mhm. We don't have it centrally anywhere input, but at the school levels, they keep their data on their logs of who they're meeting with so that we can start to see that.
Having that on the school level potentially give some guidance on what that school's actual need was? If you're at a school where 50% of the students are utilizing graduation coaches, but another school where 75% and 75% of 700, you know, that's significant. I'm just wondering, like, have we analyzed our data to try to figure out, you know, what realistic number at each school are the graduation coaches working?
Well, you know, I think it's a balance of number of students and the student need as well, because as both Mr. Price and Mr. McCracken, you know, presented as well, some of the students, it might be we've got a weekly meeting and we're good and we had that touch point. Some of the students, it's, you know, I'm visiting their house, I'm doing higher levels of intervention, so it's more time commitment. And that level of student at different schools presents different needs. So it's a complex, you know, it's complex to do right now, but we do work with the schools to track the needs, and then we also ask, of course, when we do budget season, you know, what are certain needs at each school level. So, which is where we landed with having 10 graduation coaches in the division, which I do believe is more than our partnering divisions when you look at a school ratio, to the student ratio.
Ms. Slaughter had a second question.
Yes, and my second question, it looks like according to slide number 10, addressing attendance, that our senior cohort has more issues with
Absenteeism,
attendance
chronic
issues.
absenteeism.
Yes, have we been able to, I mean, I know it can be a multiplicity of things, but have we been able to identify any specific root causes?
Yes. This goes back again to engaging in those weekly on-time graduation meetings. When we have opportunity to meet with kids individually, that's when we're able to actually discern what specifically is going on for this particular kid. Now, chronic absenteeism, just so that I can make sure I clearly state this, it is inclusive of excused and unexcused absences, right? So there are some times where there could be, you know, something such as a kid was sick. It could be a kid received disciplinary consequence that was out of school suspension, or it could be, you know, travel, so many different things, which is why we have to take this on at an individual level. The data that's reflected here is just a snapshot district-wide, but in each of our schools, the graduation coaches, they remain on the forefront of knowing exactly what's going on with those students. And then I also wanted to follow up on the initial question that you so kindly asked. as it related to the graduation coaches, certainly deferring to Dr. Pohl and what he shared. I also want to emphasize that we are working diligently to really bring our freshman classes in well, with great clarity in terms of the needs, so that we can actually navigate away from having significant credit deficits that have to be overcome. Because that's when it becomes very challenging, not only from the practitioner perspective, but more challenging for our students. It requires a great deal of resolve when our kids have credit deficits. And so this is why we wanted to end with that slide of the next steps. Just put that back in front of us. To be able to share that. We don't ask for anything, haphazardly. We recognize that the board does a dynamic job in terms of making determinations relative to staffing. We simply wanted to share what the day-to-day work looks like and the scale of what that happens to encompass to be able to have a greater impact.
I have a question.
Certainly.
I know once that eighth grader hits the floor of the high school, that clock is ticking as they're part of a cohort. So are there any conversations at the middle school level, eighth grade? Because again, like you say, credit deficit, and if a student is having issues in eighth grade, then there can be some things put in place to make sure that their first day of high school they're on the right path.
Absolutely, and I so appreciate you framing that question in that manner, because it speaks to an acknowledgement of the fact that when we talk about graduation, this is not something that it simply resides at the high school level. This actually begins K all the way up, actually pre-K, because we have pre-K. Many of our kids participate in pre-K. The early literacy at the elementary school level is huge. So every time members of our curriculum and instruction team talk about reading, where we are with reading plans, we know in terms of graduation, that's already informing the work that we have to do. At the middle school level, many of our students have opportunities, and we had some of them even highlighted in the state of the schools, and you made the note about the K-8, Southside STEM and other schools. I'm just using them as an example. But at the middle school level, this is where some of our kids actually begin to attain credits in the area of foreign language. Some of our kids are attaining credits relative to end of course. And so certainly those conversations are going forward. But that's going to need to be an ongoing conversation as the accountability measures are shifting. And so we have to make sure that we, to the best of our ability, are able to be in front of educating our families, equipping our students, but we are really pursuing this ninth grade to try to establish structures that help our kids encounter greater success, because the need for resilience and resolve is huge. And this is why I think it was Mr. Price who had mentioned the home visits. Yes, and in mentioning the home visits, a lot of times that gets overlooked. But our graduation coaches are actually in the neighborhoods trying to recover kids who are not reporting to school, because graduation, we know how pivotal that is for post-secondary outcomes, right? And so if we have a kid who, for some reason, has disengaged, even if they aren't coming into the school, we're going into the homes, into the communities to try to activate a conversation that brings us back to the table. Now, sometimes that conversation happens to result in our students coming back in and being able to engage in credit recovery efforts, from Edmentum, different alternatives. And then other times, our students recognize that the scale is quite daunting. And then we host conversations about the possibility, once once we have exhausted every single option to try to get our kids re-engaged, that's when we would actually move forward and talk with our kids about the possibility of pursuing at least a GED, because as I've heard Dr. Pohl mention before, we really want to make sure that our kids leave us with that high school diploma, and if not, at least a GED, because it impacts their earning potential. I know we all recognize that, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
I don't want to talk too much, huh?
Go ahead, Ms. Buffalo.
Yes, Dr.
Please.
At Maury High School, I can't speak
Please.
for the other schools. At Maury High School, we actually visit some of the feeder middle schools. We've gone to Ghent and to Blair, so we are touch basing with the eighth graders that are rising to be ninth graders.
And further, you know, we have also worked with Power School, our data warehouse, to do early warning systems for on-time graduation all the way to the elementary level that include nationally normed indicators like your attendance, grades, discipline, and then when you get into middle school, start talking about high school credits being earned at the middle school level to help give those indicators along the way as well.
Because I think one of you mentioned, and I'm just kind of drawing on my own experience at the high school level, those students identify that may be overaged, credit deficit. You all, I'm sure, are giving them alternatives of pathways out because, I mean, a 18-year-old with, 2 credits, you know, those conversations, I'm sure you all are
Very
having with
difficult
those
and real,
students.
yes.
And, you know, trying to find them alternative pathways for education.
Which is exactly why that's also a part of our request. We recognize that we need to be able to pursue some additional alternatives as well,
Yeah.
just to customize the support based off of what we're seeing that are at no cost
Right.
to our students.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Martin, then D. Calogero.
Thanks, Mrs. McCarty, for, sorry.
That's McCary.
Sorry,
That's
we have a name.
Moore,
here.
it's
Moore,
fine.
Moore, okay. For your presentation. I appreciate this information. My question is around what was, I guess, kind of how we're managing the absenteeism and trying to, so at what point do we fail students? Is any of that going on where if they miss, what, 8 days or so, they fail their classes?
Well, what we try to do relative to attendance is be able to support our kids first by honoring our attendance process, right? If we have a kid, you were talking about 8 days, they've missed 8 days, at that point, we expect that they would have already had a plan, right? We refer to it as a chronic absenteeism truancy intervention plan. And the team would actually come together and meet. That would include our graduation coaches, as well as the attendance techs, school counselors, other various members of the team. We invite our students and our parents to be able to talk about, okay, what is really going on? Here's what we can do to support based off of what they're saying. If there's a concern relative to a kid being able to actually secure credits, we do actually happen to have opportunities for our kids to engage in attendance recovery efforts as well, to be able to earn back a portion of lost instructional time.
And is this something that, do you feel like you're doing a lot of upfront work to, I mean, that's obviously the point is to try to mitigate a student getting that far? And can you give us an idea of like how students are doing? I mean, how many students would you say are getting to the point where you have to implement more extreme measures with
More extreme measures.
with their recovery?
Well, that varies from school to school in terms of what the needs are and exactly what the factor is that we're pursuing. Because there may be times where we're really trying to go after attendance, right? We have a kid who's experiencing chronic absenteeism, but for some reason, they're able to come in and ace an exam. We still have a problem relative to attendance, right, and engagement. So we could probably have them not just, perform well, but actually experience mastery. Other times, there are concerns that are tied in with behavior. If it's something with behavior, those are the ones where it tends to actually touch upon a need for more extensive supports. It could be something where we are trying to work with our kids with conflict resolution skills. We're trying to enhance that. We're trying to support self-regulation. It just varies depending on what we have. But every week, we actually receive reports from our friends in ARA that actually details each student, right? We can look at each and every student in every cohort to see exactly who's on track, who's off track, and even know what their average happens to be in the class at that time.
Thank you.
So, so to answer, I hope I answered your question. We have to intervene early and often.
I think that goes back to the MTSS process as well, when we talk about being proactive versus reactive. And so MTSS process starts early on in the school year. And so for, as an example, I said that it's a district-wide initiative. It's happening at all the high schools, I'm sure at many of the middle schools and elementary schools at a different capacity. But in our school in particular, we meet a minimum of 4 hours a week over a 2-day period to look at, again, our chronic absenteeism, but as well as failure rates. But we also do what we call teacher referrals for teachers. Let's say the student is going to blocks 1, 2, and 4, but they're not going to block 3 for some reason. So we can have that teacher reach out to us and say, well, this student's not, getting the content within block 3 because they're skipping this particular class, or they're missing their last block of the day because they're leaving to go to work. And so that again goes back to that piece of, we look at the quantitative data and we say, well, this data doesn't look where, perfect or where we want it to be. But then we go to that qualitative piece of understanding that student and why they're having to navigate that change of, a particular student we had 40 days of absences. And we say, well, that's a lot of absences for one particular student. And then you go to that student's story and understand that they're one sibling out of 9. The mother's a single mother. They're now the only one that's old enough to go and work, so they're trying to leave school to go to work. And so then we have to try to adjust around that to be able to support the student, keep them in the block and keep them in school, but also navigate the barriers that they're having to have at home to be able to get them to graduation. But the MTSS process is really where we are able to kind of facilitate getting that data early on, but it has to be intentional and it has to be on a weekly basis.
Thank you for all the work you are doing. Calogero, you had a question?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you for the work that you're doing, all three of you. And looking at slide 11, on the behavior slide, what I feel it's lacking, because I can't get my head around the out-of-school and in-school abstention rates, I need to know
Numbers.
more of how many students in the cohort were actually being referred.
Okay. What we will do is actually pull an addendum and get that put together.
Because it's hard, like 51%, but 51% of, or 10% of the students in the cohort or 25% of the students in the cohort. So it's just a little hard for me to get my head around this particular piece of data.
We'll pull that and get that to you. Absolutely.
Yeah, was that?
That was it.
That was it, okay. First, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you all for the hard work that you do, and I know we have others back there.
Oh, yes, I also need to acknowledge Ms. Ravel. Please, again, forgive me. I am in presentation mode.
And to all the graduation coaches in our district that are watching, and, appreciate all of the work that goes into this endeavor to get our students, to graduation. So you talked about, so there were some great questions asked today around, what you need, what do we need for our students to be successful, not just, in high school, but throughout their academic life. And as Ms. Moore Buffalo asked, that 8th grade transition to 9th grade and you capturing them at that point is really important before they fall too far behind, because then we know that impacts dropouts and trying to capture that. So speaking more about what infrastructure changes are needed to really do this well, knowing what our students' needs are. And Mr. McCracken, you talked about basically, the care team, what I always refer to as the care team with the attendance technician, the counselors, social workers. So it's not so much, is it just graduation coaches that, and I don't mean just like, they're not enough, but, like you said, it's a multidisciplinary effort to get students what they need to be successful to graduation and beyond. And so not just what are the needs from a graduation coach standpoint, but school counselors, social workers, attendance technicians, like what does that really look like to meet the needs of our students based on, the data that we have in front of us? Because some of these numbers, like you said, are large.
Absolutely.
In some of our schools, but the needs, where we have smaller groups of students, it's still, like, I'm grateful that we still have graduation coaches at those schools, but it seems like we need more of that care team.
Absolutely.
Let me, sorry, Ms. Moore, let me tackle that in a couple ways. Of course, more social workers, even some more school psychologists would be helpful. I think, though, what's most important is the systems that are being developed. So, if you recall, we just put graduation coaches in place 4 years ago, I think. And then this is the first year where we've had central office support to really support that work and to create more of a structure of what's going on. So we're looking at the schools, and the coaches that have strengths and trying to grow those strengths across. And I think that's, using what we have is very important right now, and utilizing those resources even more. I think most importantly, being able to fill some positions that we have that are vacant within social workers or school psychologists. Our 10 graduation coaches, those are all filled. But, to make sure that we do have the full rounded support in place is, more important. Sometimes I think we get in a trap of throwing more and saying we need more, when we really need to organize our efforts better, which is what we're doing right now. And we're building this process. And this is a tough task. We're talking student by student that these gentlemen work with to make this number different. And they're doing it in two different ways, right? They're going after our seniors who are at the cliff's edge that we need to make sure we're there for. And then at the other end, were our students who are coming into high school saying, here's how we stay away from getting to that level. And as we do that, we'll see progressive improvement with our numbers. It's a slow move, but it's a solid move with what's being put into place. So I do think, of course, we could use more, positions, on the ground. But I think first we need to make sure that we're utilizing our positions to the fullest and that we fill the positions that we have opened before we create new positions just because we can't fill the other positions.
Right. And I appreciate that and agree wholeheartedly that the systems that we have in place we have to ensure that they're working effectively for our students. But to that end, it's do we ideally know what that would look like is kind of like where we need to go in order to feel like we're making an impact there, I guess, is like where are we trying to go, even whether it's the system that we currently have in place or what we might need to ideally get to.
Yeah.
You might have to think about that and.
Well, and I think part of it, comes in when we, bring Dr. Moore in with wraparound service and everything else and our social workers. I think, having additional social workers who can do more home visits and who have more experience in that. So graduation coaches can focus more on the core academics and the supports and attendance and other things and discipline and really mentoring. That will help, but, we have vacancies in those areas still. So really filling in what we have is important right now.
Okay, and I didn't realize, so about how many vacancies, if it's in the chart, I'll go back and look at it.
It should be in the chart. I don't have the number off the top of my head.
Yeah, okay. And if there are barriers associated with getting those vacancies filled, I'd I think it'd be important for the board to hear what those barriers are, so that when we talk about what we might be able to do to get them in place, or get those positions filled, that would be important. And speaking of, so the graduation coaches that are doing the home visits right now, are they also trained to navigate some of the needs that our families may need? Like, you talked about, some of the social and emotional needs of our families overall. Are they trained to deal with those situations where?
Yes,
they
and
get
they're
resources?
all of our graduation coaches are experienced. Earlier this year, I actually had an opportunity to engage in a home visit alongside one of our graduation coaches at Lake Taylor High School. So certainly they recognize the complexities that are involved in being able to support our families with the sensitivity of actually being at someone's home. Yes.
And finally, so we have Open Campus, which is our credit recovery program, and it's like, if there are ideas that you might have about how do we strengthen opportunities like that to help engage our students, because some of this is just engaging students, right? They're disengaged, they don't see the relevancy of being there, especially if they're, like you mentioned, not reading on grade level, and they're several grade levels behind and academically struggling. Like, how are we creating those systems and opportunities like Open Campus or with the 3Es? Like, how are we building that infrastructure to meet that need of just engaging students back into?
Well, and that's a part of the whole process with graduation coaches. So they know the connections. They know if a student, needs to connect with Open Campus, or if they need to go online with our software provider for credit recovery. They know the connections to make, and they are that tool now to help build that process for each student individually, because each student's going to be different to meet their needs.
And do we have tutors, especially for those that may be on Edmentum that might need like the, one-on-one interaction with a teacher? Do we have tutors to work with those students?
There are tutoring funds that are usable for
Okay.
that. And there's also, this year, we engaged with another, when FEV Tutor closed down, we went with a different company that is more broadly, has different availability. And also, we went with another online provider that's more face-to-face and does more with the high school student than what we had previously as well.
Right, and that's specifically, I think you're referring to tutor.com and its capacity to be able to support students who are enrolled in general classes all the way up to AP coursework.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Dr.
Thank
Mark?
you.
I want to acknowledge Mr. Brady and sharing that information as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore, my question for you is around if there are any, I'd just like to know from you if there are any policies that are in place currently that may be an obstacle for the work that you're doing, and if so, if you have any recommendations for us.
Well, thank you so much for the consideration. Earlier, when we were actually engaged in the State of the Schools address, one of the themes that was woven across multiple slides that talked about the importance of quality Tier 1 instruction, right? And of course, we have wonderful educators across our schools who work long hours to really be able to support our kids. But we also have emerging teachers who need to have time to actually hone their skills. And so as we continue to make strides with quality Tier 1 instruction, we will certainly be able to capitalize on that relative to graduation as well as promotion. In addition to that, just to go back and tag on to a question that Ms. Basine had mentioned, and you had actually mentioned attendance technicians. I also happen to have a good fortune of being able to support our attendance technicians. At each of the high schools, we have one attendance technician. So if you go back to the slide, and you notice the ratio of graduation coaches to students, you could just add those numbers together, and that's what we have in terms of our attendance technicians at each of the high school, which of course we say thank you. We say thank you. We celebrate this because we know that that was a shift that was approved in the past year. But we certainly would not want to be remiss, right, in bringing that to the board's attention. And certainly, we will work to share additional factors for consideration that, of course, I would run by Dr. Pohl before speaking publicly, because there's so many thoughts streaming through my mind. But I will be disciplined and yield.
Ms. Slaughter, you have a question?
Yes, I have one more quick question. I know the focus of graduation coaches is to help our scholars graduate. Are we also focusing on career readiness or specifically college readiness?
Yeah, when we talk about the 3E readiness framework, it is and. As a result, our kids can actually engage, for example, in the ASVAB assessment, and they could actually be pursuing a high-demand credential in partnership with CTE, right? And Ms. Goshen is here. I want to acknowledge her as well. So there are so many options that our kids can pursue, and we stand ready to support progress across each of those.
And I'll add to that as well that, you know, our school counselors do a lot with academic and career planning. So from elementary school up, you know, we have a lot of pieces in place to help guide students through that path of where do they want to go. And then, of course, when we get to the high school level with our students who are struggling to get through that pathway, then our graduation coaches come in and say, well, let's look at this path and maybe some alternative paths.
Well, our last comment will be if you happen to see Ms. Chandler Wynn or Ms. Ash come across, names come across your desk, just let us know.
I have something I want to say.
Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, and I want to say thank you to all the coaches. And I'm very familiar with one of your coaches. 3 of my kids went through this one coach. And when I say she's putting the work in and still putting the work in, she knows who I'm talking about. I would have liked to have seen all of the coaches represent all our high schools to come here and just share something like these young men just did. You know, share their story or what they do in their school to make things, you know, more successful for our students.
Absolutely, Ms. Thomas, and if we have an opportunity to come back before the board, we will certainly integrate that. This invitation came just prior to the holidays, and Mr. McCracken and Mr. Price were kind enough to take my call. And so they were able to be with us this evening. But this is exactly why I wanted to include a slide that actually showed exactly who our coaches are.
I want to go to
because
the
they are
slide,
major
slide
people.
6.
Yes.
If you could just give us the names and what school.
Oh,
they serve.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes. Okay. On the left, top row, we happen to have Miss Jacqueline Ely. She is a graduation coach at Norview High School. She supports cohort 2026 as well as cohort 2027. Next, you'll see Mr. Price, who is actually here with us in the flesh and has already shared remarks. He is a graduation coach at Maury High School. Next, we have Miss Ms. Walker, thank you. Ms. Sheena Walker, she's a graduation coach at Lake Taylor High School. She's the one I was actually talking about when we had an opportunity to engage in those home visits together earlier this year. Then we happen to have Mr. Matthew Whitehead. He's a graduation coach at Booker T. Washington High School, serving cohorts 2026 and 2027. Ms. Ravel is actually seated to my left. She is the other companion graduation coach at Maury High School, supporting cohort 2028 as well as 2029. Then we happen to have Ms. Tracy Boone. Ms. Tracy Boone is a graduation coach at Granby High School. She is actually right now working double duty with the principal, Mr. Smeagol, as her graduation partner is out on leave. But she is supporting all of our cohorts right now alongside with him because of the lead factor. Then, of course, we happen to have bottom row, left to right, Dr. Andrea Callahan. She is a graduation coach at Lake Taylor High School, supporting cohorts 2026 and 2027. Then we happen to have Miss Veronica Hill in the middle, bottom row. She is a graduation coach for Norview High School, serving cohorts 2028 and 2029. And we end with Mr. Levi Wall. He is the other graduation coach for Booker T. Washington High School, supporting cohort 2028 and 2029.
I'm impressed.
I am impressed as
I'm
well.
impressed.
If I can see, you know, I'm like, bring the picture closer.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask one last time, any more questions? We're good? Thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you.
All right. For board members, we're going to move on to 3.03, draft school board calendar. I believe you all have a hard copy. If you do not, let me know. As we move forward in our business meeting, it will be there for approval. So if there's any comments or regarding this, just reach out and just let me know. But take time to review that, but it will be on the agenda, I was going to say January 21st for a vote. So just please review that. Also, the committees it's not up there, but I will send this out. And I say, if you're okay with your committee, because it is January, and we know usually these committees go from July to June, right? And so sometimes in a break with this can be, you know, you have to get on board and learn and all those things. So if you are pretty cool where you are, I understand that. I know there will be a shift with D. Caligero and myself, but if you're okay with your assignment, I'm good with that. Because I understand that it's usually these committees serve from July to June, and taking a break in the middle of the service would probably have some kind of impact. Yeah. So I'll.
At the same time, Ms.
Something, okay. We're gonna find
That
something.
is, you know,
Yeah,
that you would enjoy serving on.
yeah. But I will send this out, okay? And we can get that updated. All right, so that brings me to 401, future agenda item. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I'd like to request next, our January business meeting to be held at Lake Taylor High School. We'd like to recognize our our state champions, spring track for Maury, Lake Taylor High School football and Maury football, and that would be a large crowd, and I think it's kind of inconvenient for our parents to have to find parking here.
Okay.
So I'd like to request if we could do our January 21st business meeting at the high school so we have more space so we can celebrate more students.
Well, you've all heard Dr. Pohl's request. Is the board okay with that? Yes. Good, all right, well, there you go. Our January 21st meeting is at Lake Taylor High School.
Gotta let Lake Taylor know.
Yeah,
We'll take care of the rest. Yeah, we
it's
got it.
strategically. I do want to, before we go around, to include Dr. Pohl, if we could in the future, whenever you see where it fits, a presentation on the family engagement specialists and their role and impact, and I'm sure it's intertwined with the, you know, what graduation coaches do, and had the opportunity to speak at a task force, and that came up multiple times. And as I shared with individuals, that looks different from school to school based on what the need is, right? And so how do we measure that? How do we know that it's making an impact in those schools? So at that.
I will add it to my list.
Ms. Slaughter?
Dr. Pohl, while you're adding things to your list, I would like to find out the current mental health and mental wellness status of our scholars sometime on the agenda, please, and what we're doing to address what we're doing and how we are addressing those needs. Thank you.
Dr. Martin?
I'm just going to bring this up again about training on
Yes.
data.
Oh, yeah.
As a data-driven board, we need to have that training, and I think the longer we wait, the more detrimental our work here.
Yeah. And to expand on that, we just need training, period.
Yes.
Because, yeah, we have a new board. I mean, obviously, anytime a new member joins, and we just need board training. And that needs to be prioritized.
Colonel Polson?
Last time, we talked about, where is it? I'm looking at the minutes from the last meeting, so it's in there. I still think we should rethink the ability of the citizens to be able to contact us. And everybody said, well, we got an email, you got this, you got that. Again, I think giving them more time, not more time, but some time, is, I think twice a month is still an idea. We didn't talk about it a lot last time, but it didn't seem to have a good standing with anybody. But I still think it's necessary because, again, everybody's changing. They have expectations. Sending them an email, they're sending it to us. They don't get responses. We're all busy, but I think we need to give them more of an opportunity to speak to us.
Are we following the process that making sure that everybody is in agreement with what's being added to the agenda?
Yes. So, back to what Colonel Polson said, I'm assuming you're talking about speaking at a work session.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Sorry, I wasn't that clear.
For me, I'll stand on it. It's a hill I'll die on, that I believe a work session is what we're doing now. Having conversations around a subject matter, having discussion. We have multitude of ways for the community to contact us, and everyone can't come up here in person and speak. So again, work sessions is exactly what they are. It's a time for the board to come around, have discussions around subject matter, and talk things through. And so I'm not in agreement with having comment during a work session.
That work sessions are for the work.
Of the
And
school
the
board.
business
Mhm.
meetings are for the community.
Business of the school board, yes.
Agree.
Agree. Is there anyone else?
Also
go ahead.
mentioned was a possibility or potential for having a survey. They could find out what's their concerns. And I don't see that.
So don't we have an annual survey that goes out to Colonel Polson that the school board, the administration sends out?
We do. It doesn't, I'm not sure if Colonel Paulson's talking about specific school board, or ours is administrative and school.
Right.
Doesn't have anything on school board. So if we wanted to add something like that, that would be at the direction of the board, if we wanted to add some questions on that.
Are you saying a survey, Colonel Polson?
On school board.
On the
Yeah,
school board.
So somehow, there's another way for them to reach us. We can do the survey once a year, twice a year to get input.
So,
Your audience be.
right, and what is the end game? What are you trying to get from the public?
Input,
Because you keep saying, contact us, so are you, I'm not sure.
What their concerns are. They change from day to day.
Who's they? I guess.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, constituent, okay, that's the important piece, is who
Yeah,
who the
that's what I'm
they
trying
are, yeah.
to get.
The constituents have another way to reach us. That's what I'm trying to advocate for, a different way for them to reach us. Some don't have the ability they don't, depending where you live, email's not sufficient. They don't have access like some of the parts of the city where in the poverty areas, that they don't have a way to reach us. They don't have access to computers. I think they give them hotspots, but that's for the child to do his or her work. But what about the parents?
Surveys would be electronic, so.
Right.
We'd still have the same barriers between an email and a survey.
And for most of us, I think we have school board issued phones, and that information is on the website under all of our profiles on the website. We have email addresses. Ms. Tanner is our board clerk. She is citizens contact us through her as well. There's on our website, there's multiple opportunities. Ms. Tanner, can you pull up our website? Multiple opportunities for the public to reach out to us, whether it's telephone. Shoot, I had some people come to my house and ring the doorbell because I'm right in the, steps away from St. Helena School. I'm like, ooh, oh, hey, how you doing? Okay. But, oh, you still can't go, okay. So there's different ways for the community to contact the board. And again, we have at our business meeting opportunity for agenda and non-agenda topics for anyone to come and speak. And they can also, if they want to contact us via email and share their comments that way. So weren't able to get it.
But we do have,
Okay.
like you said, the email, school board clerk and
There's many
the school
ways for
board
our
email account.
constituents. Like I said, I've had several come to my front door, so, Oh,
Okay, here we go.
you've been holding out, Dr. Pohl.
I'm familiar with the
Oh, okay. But
the
I
school
was just
board
saying,
and what's
so-
on there. I was just, again, trying to advocate for a different way.
Right.
Like, what about the joint meeting with the city council?
That is on my list. I personally am going to call the mayor and get that as a priority.
But we, go ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to
Yes, Ms. Slaughter?
I wanted to make sure, are you finished?
Yes,
You sure?
yes, she said that she's gonna
Yeah, I'm going to.
reach out.
Self-evaluations.
Yep.
And then we have a student rep who would like to make a comment.
I just want to say if we could have a discussion on our student representative roles and just like a little bit more insight on what exactly we're supposed to be doing.
And that's a priority for me, Chandler Wynn, because in my experience, the school board rep plays a vital role in the school board. And I also will share that we're in the beginning planning stages for the Tidewater, VSBA Tidewater Regional Forum, and we talked about and you all being part of that, that event and showcasing our students. So I hear you. I agree. Anyone else? Yep. Right. We're going to move down to 4.02. May I have a motion to go into closed executive session?
I make a motion that we move into closed executive session.
Second?
Second.
I said,
Colonel Polson, Slaughter?
oh, no. it was
Barton?
Somebody over there.
Okay. All right. Good? All right, any discussion? No?
We have Slaughter and Martin.
Yes.
Right. Okay. You ready?
No, you read the
Okay.
motion.
Move that the members of the School Board of the City of Norfolk go into a closed meeting for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of Section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended. 4, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the school board pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A1 of the Act. The subjects covered by this exemption are the discussion of a potential violation of confidentiality in connection with a specific personnel matter and a discussion of of specific candidates for appointment to the position of superintendent, discussion of the award, terms, or scope of a public contract where discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to subsection 2.2-3711A29 of the Act. The subject covered by this exemption is the discussion of the award, terms, and scope of a possible superintendent contract. Consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel pursuant to subsection 2.2-37111A1A8 of the Act. The subjects covered by this exemption are consultation when in connection with an alleged violation of school board policy and the matters set above in subsections A and B of this motion. Basine?
Aye.
Buffalo?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Folsom?
Aye.
Slaughter?
Aye.
Thomas? DeCalagero.
Okay, we're now in closed session.